Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted that you're all here. And I was absolutely bowled over by the idea of even having such a performance. And this young lady only visited me once and said, yes, I'll do it. 20 years ago, I got an official charity number for Mayo Animal Welfare. I came here in 1978, and it was about 6 weeks later, I was outside my little hovel, as my brother calls it, and a little girl came past and she was crying her eyes out. And I said, what's wrong? She said, Mummy said, I could pull the bird's head off. And I said, really? So I took the little bird in and I fixed it up. And after that, the word went around, that crazy foreigner likes animals. So the crazy foreigner got many animals. So now I've said the crazy old foreigner likes animals. And they're still coming. In the last 10 days, I've had a seal, 2 owls, baby owls, a little mallard, 2 tiny domestic ducklings, and some hares. And luckily, most of them survive. When I left school, I became a teacher, taught for a few years, realized I couldn't stay cooped up in the classroom, I'd go berserk. And I went back and I studied wildlife conservation. So when I came here, of course, elephants and lions are very thin on the ground, but I managed to work with what there is. And I take in anything and everything that needs help. But I don't believe in caging animals up. When they get better, they go back to the wild, to safe places. Hedgehogs is my speciality. I have a waiting list for people who want to adopt hedgehogs. Now they go into very nice organic gardens where there's no tractors and no poison and no nothing, and they can go about doing their business. So if you ever need a hedgehog, do contact me. I've got enough cats to cover Mayo. So if anyone's looking for a house cat, not a rat cat, as I've heard people say. So there's cats, there's dogs, there's hedgehogs that can go out. Rabbits, bunnies, guinea pigs, all those sort of little creatures I keep because they just become a 3-day wonder and then back they come. Just to give you an example, I got a call from a lady in Ballina who's always terribly precise, very nice lady to talk, very laid back, and this day she phoned me and I thought her britches were on fire. Somebody had gone into Tesco's and released 2 ferrets. The shoppers were running in all directions. So of course I had to rush up and collect 2 ferrets. Now I wouldn't hand them on to somebody because they'd have them for 3 weeks and then they get tired of them and then they'd be back in again. I've got up in the mornings, found dogs thrown over the gate, kittens stuck in my letterboxes, dreadful things. So that's the animal side of it. Now, the Africa side of it. As I'm sure most of you know, I was born and bred in Africa. And I left for political reasons. Had I not have left, I might have had a holiday at the state's expense. Anyways, I was here for quite a while, and I was running an organic garden for Western Care for people with learning disabilities. And I got this little letter from Ghana, and I thought, I don't know what's from Ghana. And it said, will you help us train volunteers to teach people with learning disabilities and then send them back to us trained? So I went to the guards and they said, this is 20 years ago. Oh, no, we can't give you permission to bring people in from Ghana. So I wrote to the Department of Foreign Affairs and they said, you can only bring somebody in if you promise to put them back on the plane and send them home. Now I cannot take a 6'6" Ghanaian and say, home, on the plane, go. Took me over. Anyway, so I sent out a program that I've written for organic gardening, and I sent out £100 as it was in those days, and the Reverend started off. He actually heard about me. He was in the library and he read an article, I still don't know what magazine, about the work I was doing, and he wrote to me and asked if I'd help them. And he'd written to 99 other people in various countries, and no one would help him because he was just one person. We only help organizations, or we're too busy to help at all. Anyway, he started off doing this program, and it worked so well that within a year, a local politician came to him and said, this is working so well, would you take a few street children? And he thought, half a dozen. And they arrived at his 2-room mission with a bus loaded with girls between the ages of 12 and 20 who'd been put out to earn a living on the street. And he phoned me, and he was gagging. And I said, calm down, what's wrong? Oh, what am I doing with these women? I said, do home economics program. He said, what do I know about home economics? He said, I'm a Bible student. So I said, I'll send you necessaries. So I wrote him a program for sewing. And he said, but we've got no stuff. So I sent out the first container with sewing machines, tables, chairs, material, blah, 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 blah. I'm on container number 19 now. So we've done containers for various areas. In this particular one, it's full of hospital beds, wheelchairs, crutches. When they know containers are coming, people come from miles around begging for wheelchairs. The one old man came on his bottom, hopping on his hands for 5 miles through the bush to beg for a chair. It's absolutely horrendous. There's a picture here somewhere of a girl called Anna, whose legs were like that. And I found her sitting right at the back of the village in the middle of nowhere. Filthy dirty, no one doing a thing for her because she couldn't move. She literally couldn't move. I sent her out a wheelchair. The next time I went to that village, I didn't go in with an ambulance or the van or anything, I just walked in. And she was in the middle of the village, clean as a new pin, and they pushed her around wherever they went because they could actually move her. In that particular area, I discovered there was no school. So I used my SSA and I built a small school for them. And then the Quakers in Dublin gave me money to extend the school that goes up to Intercert now, which is called Junior Certificate. So I do schools and I try to do things for clinics and hospitals. And then I discovered Dwarf Island. Now they're not very PC out there, I have to say. I mean, they're meant dwarf, little people. And this island there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. It's in the middle of the Walter Lakes. And in 2010, I went on the island. I was the first white person ever to set foot on the island. It's completely primitive. And they were drinking water from the lake that gave them bilharzia, which makes them extremely sick. And very often the children die of it. So cut a long story square, we've got 8 boreholes on the island now. They get clean water. We've also managed to get a grader onto the island, and they've made 110 kilometres of road. And there's 21 so-called schools on the island, very primitive schools, but schools of some description. So the next project we're working on is to get them solar panels, so that each village can have a solar panel and a fridge, because the place is boiling with snakes. If you get bitten by a snake out there, there's no hope for you unless you get antivenom. You can't use the antivenom unless it's kept cold. So the next project is collecting money to get solar panels. You can buy them there, but we need to pay for them, obviously. So this container I'm sending now, I need to raise another 4,000 to send it. Now people say this is very expensive, but when you think of the distance it's going from Kilmeena to Dublin, from Dublin to Rotterdam, from Rotterdam to Tenerife, from Tenerife to Tima, then it gets unpacked, all goes onto trucks, goes right down to a little village called Gemini, and from there it goes on little canoes with outboard motors. And you have to pay for all that, obviously. And then everything gets handed out. And you can see the various stuff that we've sent. Now, just as a matter of interest, this picture here, helping people to help themselves. This lady lives in Germany, where there is electricity. It's a little place where you hop off to go to the island. And her husband was killed, and she had 4 children and no way of looking after them. So I managed to raise the funds from the maintenance men in Western Care to buy that huge freezer. She started selling ice. She now has a little shop selling ice cream and lemonade, and she sends those 4 children to school, and they spick and span, and as they should be. And all I had to do was give her that to get going. The sewing schools we started are working fabulously. If you're taught to sew, you're taught to sew for free, but then you have to teach 2 other people to sew. And they get little hand machines. The last time I went out, I spent about 21,000 that I've raised, and 1,200 of that I bought butterfly machines that came from China. And they'll put the machine up on their heads and they'll trot along, and you'll go to all the people in this area, stop at the door and say, can I sew for you? You might say, well, if you sew my skirt, you can put a zip in my trousers or whatever. You pay them, they put the machine back on their head and off they go to the next place. And I was driving through the bush one day, in the middle of nowhere, and I saw all these colours in a tree, and I thought, God, I don't recognise that tree. That's weird. Anyway, as I got closer, there was a lady sitting under the tree sewing dresses and hanging them up in the tree. And you could actually go and try one on behind the tree, nobody minds, and buy your dress. And she had a little business under a tree with a hand sewing machine, taking care of herself. And it's certainly better than the alternative, I feel. So when I go out there, I take a lot of money with me, obviously, to do various projects. And one of the best projects we did for the island was a fish farm. Unfortunately, that's very small. When we started the fish farm, it was that size. And now it's all together along here. And that started with 2 small outboard motors that went out in a container. And Barbara Murray, the photographer, gave me vouchers to sell. And I sold the vouchers to people, and I got the money. She did the work, and we bought a boat. So they went over to the Department of Fisheries, and they said, we've got a boat, we've got 2 outboard motors, we've got life jackets and all the rest of it. And then the government came and helped them set up the fish farm. And one whole village has now got a little co-op around that fish farm, and they're looking after themselves. So there's no CEO, and there's no, admin and advertising and all the rest of it. It's just straight in, straight out, and straight to the people who get it. And I don't give it to someone to give to someone, I give it to the person who needs it. There's a little girl photographed there, she was blind on the island, and a teacher in Westport donated €500. She got her operation, she can see. That's how I do the work. And because I know a lot of people there, it just works flowingly. And over the years, I've sent out 4 ambulances, I've sent out 4 tractors, a quad, hundreds of hospital beds, because you go to hospital there, you pay through the nose and you sleep on the floor, which is not very pleasant. Crutches, whoever leaves that behind will get home. And just for this particular container, I'm desperately in need of a motorbike. If anyone knows anyone who would like to donate a motorbike. Because that will be used on the island to go to do clinic runs and all sorts of things. We have a doctor in our midst who can tell you this is not a pleasant statistic. There's 12,500 people on the island. There's not one doctor, there's not one nurse, there's health workers. And 2 or 3 years ago, 12 ladies died in childbirth out there. I mean, it's really, they really need help to help themselves. And what we're hoping to do is to get an orphanage built for the orphans and to get a clinic with a nurse, at least a nurse, on the island. So any penny you donate is going towards transport. And I'll be quite honest with you, if somebody donated that candlestick to me, I would say that's absolutely beautiful. And I take it straight down to Curiosity. Lynn would sell it for me and the money would go towards medicine or transport or whatever else is needed. I've paid for several operations for people who, if they didn't have the money, couldn't have it done. One little girl, this is a horrific picture, she's burnt from here to there, right down, 3rd degree. And she didn't as much as get a painkiller until I sent over €500 to sort it out. So that's the kind of thing we're doing out there. And this lady here is helping me terrifically packing orphan boxes for those who need children's clothes, suitable shoes, blankets, anything that you'd want to hand in, we'll be pleased to have.
And copybooks.
Oh yes, we make something called happy bags, and those are copybooks, pencils, rubber ruler, sharpener, face cloths, cake of soap, toothbrush and toothpaste. We've actually handed soap to ladies and they've cried. Because if your child is dirty or your child is hungry, are you going to wash it or are you going to feed it? I mean, that's the level we're working at, in all honesty. So anything you might have, is my telephone number there somewhere? They just let me know.
Well, at this point, but I'm sure we can.
And in the line of animals, I've taken everything over the years, bar a 10-foot python and a tarantula. Because I just had nowhere to put them, and quite frankly, they're not pets. When I lived in the bush, there were pythons in the bush where they belonged, and there were big, hairy monkey spiders running around the ceiling, and they ate the bugs, but we didn't put them in glass jars. So, that's in a nutshell, is it? Oh, and also we're looking for baby buggies, by the way, and cots, if anyone's got some. We've always got space for those.
I'm all out of confidence. I think you've heard, you heard